Got a minute? Let me holler at you for just a second. Let me ask you a question. What do you call a person who does something opposite of what they say they believe? Or someone who actually did something completely different for what they said they would never do? Or someone like a politician or a public figure or someone well known that has a global brand that says, I stand for fill in the blank. But then you find out later that an expose was done on them and busted them, and they were outed as having done something completely opposite of what that thing is. What do we call that kind of person? A hypocrite. I want to talk to you about hypocrites for a second, because there's a difference between being a hypocrite and actually making a mistake. Because I know a lot of people get that confused, and we love throwing around the word hypocrite because in some kind of way, calling someone a hypocrite brings about a kind of self-righteousness, if we're being honest. Think about it for a second. When we call someone a hypocrite, somehow we have separated ourselves not laterally, but vertically. We've gone up on a perch and we've looked down on them and said, basically, you suck. You suck because you're not what you said here. And look what you did here. When in fact, it could have been a flat out mistake. And there's all kinds of mistakes. There's moral, ethical, spiritual, business, relational mistakes. Now, I'm not trying to make light of a few things because I know some of you have already run ahead and you've actually filled in the circle and you said, well, I'm justified. I cheated on my fill in the blank, my girlfriend, my boyfriend, my husband, my wife. And this somehow justifies I just made a mistake. So just accept it. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. That's making light of something extremely serious. And that actually is a completely different discussion around hypocrisy or even mistakes that leads to the moral, ethical destruction of the fabric of a person's ability to make a decision and a choice that actually matters under fire. But getting back to my original topic about the hypocrite, be careful who you call a hypocrite, because every time we look in the mirror, I'm certain that we'll see a reflection of ourselves that on some days we may not even recognize. Now, some of you think you're physically attractive, and you believe that because other people have told you that. Others believe that because you think you see something within yourself that other people don't see. As a matter of fact, they're like, no, man, you butt ugly. Wait a second. Not talking about slander, talking about hypocrisy. But hypocrisy is kind of like that. It's like looking into a mirror and thinking you see one thing when in fact, there's something else looking right back at you. Now, we've all looked in mirrors before, and we're able to analyze and memorize and understand what we think we see, what we perceive to see. We know what the shape of our nose is, or our eyebrows, or our lips, or our ears, or our forehead. You can go through all of the mechanics of what it means to be you. And any little variation or any little alteration, all of a sudden, you're hypersensitive to that because you've seen it over and over and over again. So when someone sees you behave in a way that is different from the way that you claim to believe, I wonder, did you ever really believe it from the beginning? And therefore, maybe that's the reason why you've acted out in a way that is completely opposite of what you've claimed to others and even in the public to believe. Now, in a lot of ways, we assign this kind of behavior to politics and politicians, those who are engaged in the political sphere, because it's so easy to be a pundit or an opinion maker and someone who can launch assaults and judge behavior because someone promised on Capitol Hill that they would and they didn't. So therefore, they're a hypocrite. So we jump to the extremes rather than saying, hey, do I really understand everything that's involved with how that decision was made or how that action was carried out or why that decision was carried out. Everyone has an opinion until you don't. And usually when you don't is when you start to find out the facts that you didn't understand from the get-go, which causes you to say, maybe if I was in that position, I'd do the exact same thing. So maybe I should be a little bit slower to rendering my opinion about things and really understanding things before I just make myself a professional ranter, a professional complainer. And we have a lot of people like that out there on social media. We have a lot of people like that on television and in the news cycle every single day. They've got something to say about everything. You just don't even have to pay them. They have got an opinion on everything without ever really thinking through what it is they're saying. We want to be careful with that because the hypocrite, from its very origin, is the kind of person assigned to theater. And you think about the actor, and what an actor does is pretends to be someone else. Now, some of the greatest actors are actors who actually study their subject so much so that they imitate the mannerisms. They imitate the language, the facial expressions. They imitate every interaction and every flaw of their subject so that they come across as being believable. And therein lies the problem when we adopt that behavior as a part of our moral, ethical, and spiritual character. Did you catch that? The greatest actors are able to take on their subject literally like clothing, to the point where they wear and they portray every mannerism about their subject. But hypocrisy never really believed from the get-go. That actor was never that subject, ever. They're just pretending to be. And the true hypocrite never believed what they were saying. But what they do is contrary to what they are saying. Why? Because that's what hypocrisy is. But making a legitimate mistake, wait a second. It's not my position to run to every incident and be sure that I have an opinion before I really study and perceive and discern and understand what it is that I should be rendering an opinion on. So be slow to speak, real quick to listen. My grandmama used to say, that's why you got two ears and one mouth. Be slow to speak, but quick to listen. Last time I checked, that very same message was given in a really special book that you really need to listen to. Because that's kind of instruction that'll take you a long way in life, and it'll give you purpose when you do it. Do me a favor, leave me a comment below, and go ahead and subscribe if you get a minute. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because hypocrisy is something that every single human being struggles with. Don't sit here and listen and pretend that you somehow have never behaved like a hypocrite before. Or was it a mistake? What did other people say? I bet you they jumped on and called you a hypocrite when you thought it was a mistake. Well, in fact, that's something to talk about right there. I'll catch you next time. But when I do, in the meantime, stay encouraged.